All right, and I'm just going to jump right in.
Okay, sounds good.
Do it.
All right, perfect. Firstly, can you guys just give a little background, each of you, about kind of where you grew up, what do you do for work now, your family background, just a little preview about who you are.
So I'm Jackie Ramirez. I grew up born and raised in LA, and I've been here my whole life. My career is here. I'm a radio host for the number one hip hop afternoon show in LA. I work for the Dodgers. I'm an in-stadium host there, which basically means that I handle all of the entertainment side of the Dodgers, which when you see people doing trivia games in between innings or a cap shuffle or any entertainment that's involved with sports and the Dodgers, that's me hosting it on the big screens. I also do in-stadium hosting for the LA Galaxy, which is one of the MLS teams here in LA, and frankly, I think the best one. But and then I used to do a UCLA basketball hosting as well, and UCLA football. I've been doing this my whole life, entertainment, and I initially wanted to pursue sports reporting. I quickly figured out that I wasn't going to follow stats in every game and wasn't good at math that way. So I just really wanted to be involved in sports and still also in the entertainment field. And that's where this kind of meshed everything together. And I also run Mexipino podcast, with Nico, which is a Mexican and Filipino podcast highlighting both our cultures, the backgrounds that we come from, the similarities, and talking about taboo topics that aren't really normally talked about within our cultures.
Yeah, and then my name is Nico, and on top of the Mexipino podcast, we also have Mexipino Food Fest, where we coordinate events throughout California, and we bring together a lot of Mexican and Filipino food and small business owners. And personally, I am a full-time DJ and music producer. I've been DJing for about 7 years now. Been music producing for about 1 year. And honestly, I'm just here to make everything shake and bake with music.
Speaking of your podcast, how long have you guys been doing it, and why did you start it in the first place? I know you said like a mix of your cultures, but was there another reason kind of to get this going that inspired you?
So we started our first episode drop, I believe, December 3rd of 2021, and we've been going ever since. We initially started it because Nico was on live streaming his DJing on Twitch during the pandemic, and all of 2020 basically, and so we found that a lot of his audience on Twitch really liked the interactions between the both of us. Whether we had something funny to say, whether we were bantering, whether it was like just talking about the similarities, and we are each other's first person to date outside of our own ethnicity. So it was also kind of like, okay, well, I've always wanted to do a podcast. I don't have the courage to do it alone, and since people already kind of have seen our banter on social media and on Twitch, we're like, why don't we start a podcast? And then that's where Mexipino was born.
Yeah, and then we quickly realized the impact that it had on both the Mexican, Filipino, and Mexipino cultures. The cool thing was that, like, if you don't know the history about Mexicans and Filipinos, we share a lot of the same things, conquered by the same people and whatnot. So our roots are definitely like from the same realm.
Yeah.
But also the Mexipino culture itself finally found a home, so that they don't have to decide if they're one or the other.
Yeah, I think in our podcast, we always talk about being Latino enough, being Filipino enough, being just enough for our cultures, especially being born here in the U.S. We go back to our home countries, and it's just like, okay, well, they're American, and then we're here, well, you're Mexican or you're Filipino. So we finally found that common ground for the new culture and the new generation of Mexipinos, which is, frankly, when we've seen it like firsthand, that Mexipinos they do exist, and it is very big and it is crazy, but people like find that comfort in knowing, okay, my community is here.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys were able to do that and then find all these people who relate to you as well. Just going back to the community, how do you kind of stay connected with your supporters and your fans through this podcast in the community and outside? I know you have Food Fest, but is there something that else you do to try to keep that community tight knit and just expand it more and more?
Yeah, one thing that we so a lot of our community kind of comes around like our age. We're in our 20s and 30s, and even a little bit older. One thing that we wanted to do to bring together the younger generation, where the actual Mexipino babies are, was the Mexipino scholarship. So it's something that we just launched this year, and we're using a portion of our Mexipino Food Fest funds to enable a Mexican, Filipino, or Mexipino kid to further their education. Jackie and I are both in the entertainment industry. We do also realize that not everybody wants to be in the entertainment industry. So as much as we would like for this scholarship to be for someone who is in entertainment, we are not limiting it to that. We are actually just expanding it to just a Mexican, Filipino, or Mexipino kid who wants to just
Be better.
be better.
Yeah. And I think aside from that too, like we've built such a community on social media, like within Mexipino podcast Instagram, Mexipino Food Fest Instagram, and our own respective Instagrams, that some people confuse us. They think I'm Filipino. They think Nico's Mexican. Like they switch us up sometimes, and it's funny, but it's because we learn about each other's culture. We take the time to really know, and really it's okay, somebody can relate to something that I'm saying, whether it has nothing to do with being Mexican or Filipino, and just sharing that I guess subject that I'm talking about, on our podcast, saying like, hey, I feel this way about kids too, or I feel this way too about having to talk to my parents about everything that I do. We built a community and a safe space for people to reach out to us and say, we kind of get a little shocked when we get a message saying like, thank you guys so much for talking about this, because I've been feeling this way too, and that makes it all worth it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's awesome. Being, for both you guys, being in the entertainment industry, was it easier to kind of just like start a podcast and get it going because of the connections you had, or were there more hurdles that you thought that you were going to face that you did instead of others?
I'm gonna be honest, it was pretty easy because I was already prior to doing our Mexipino podcast, I was already interviewing a lot of hip hop and R&B artists on my own time. So the transition over to starting a podcast with Jackie, it's like I already had the microphones, I already had the equipment. Jackie, she obviously talks for a living. I was already doing podcasting for like 4 or 5 years by that time already. So, fair enough to say that it was a lot easier than just starting something right off the bat.
Right, of course.
Yeah,
No,
I
that
think we
makes
were
sense.
blessed in that way a little bit, so.
No, yeah, that's awesome. Use what you have and just, go for it.
Yeah.
What's the biggest takeaway you've had so far starting this podcast, or biggest lesson you've learned, kind of speaking to the community and having this following?
I think for me, it's that this is bigger than just us. This is bigger than two people talking on a microphone, two people talking about random things, talking about conspiracy theories on a microphone. It's way bigger than that. It's really inspiring the next generation of people, whether they are even Latino or Asian or Pacific Islander. I mean, we've had people who are from a black background or just a completely different background and saying like, hey, we relate to this too. Like our moms are the same way. It's way bigger than just us. And I think with that responsibility, it is a lot, but we are definitely up for it. We're definitely up for the challenge, and it just gives me a lot more purpose. I feel like when it comes to Mexipino podcast and being on radio, I sound like a listener. I look like a listener. I it's just more relatable. And I feel as long as I'm open about my experiences, then it's gonna open up the doors for so many more people like me or like Nico.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I think the biggest takeaway for me is impact, right? Which is kind of piggybacking off of what Jackie had said, because I'm not gonna lie, it's cool when people come up to me or Jackie or us as a group, talking about, like, we listen to the podcast, we've been to the food fest, or you know, like anything down the line. And not cool in the sense of like, oh my god, people know us, but more so cool in the sense of like, yo, like when you guys were talking about this, when you guys were talking about that, like I really felt that in my bones. Or, you know, just like exposing like different aspects of our culture. Like I remember one time, we were talking about we had the illustrator for Baby Groot.
Yeah, for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, and that guy is just full on Filipino. And honestly, like 3 years later, someone else comes up to me and is like, "Hey, like I actually saw that because my dad shared it with me, and my dad's like in his 50s and 60s."
And scrolling on Instagram, you know?
Yeah, and I'm just like, yo, like it's kind of cool to see the information just like move the way it does, and just see how much of an impact that it has on people. And again, exposing the information of like who's Mexican, who's Filipino that you probably didn't know, or like, you know, these are the people behind the scenes that are really making stuff work. It makes myself, and I know it also makes Jackie and everyone who listens to the podcast or has gone to a food fest proud about their culture.
Yeah, I think it's also putting like someone on a platform to be exposed to the world. Like Nico said, I mean, I don't think really anybody probably knew, or maybe a handful of people knew that one of the illustrators for Guardians of the Galaxy with Marvel was a Filipino guy, and that group is based off of Filipino culture and his little Filipino son, you know. And it's stuff like that. Like if there's a kid who wants to be an artist and he sees that, he's like, well, I can work for Marvel one day, I can work for Disney one day.
Yeah, it's opening up the possibilities for whatever someone who like looks like us can do, right? Because growing up, you know, I keep this narrative going. Like there wasn't a lot of Filipinos on screen. For Jackie too, like there were Mexicans on screen, but they were always playing these very stereotypical roles. Nowadays, you know, I still wish there were more Filipinos on screen, but that's the narrative that she and I are pushing together. But we see more in entertainment. We see more Mexicans in entertainment not taking the stereotypical roles and doing something beyond that. You know, like for Blue Beetle, for example.
Yeah.
It was just a Mexican family, and one of them just so happened to be a superhero.
Yeah.
You know, and we want to continue to see more of that and pushing that narrative, because I feel like in some little way we believe that the podcast and the food fest has either a small or big effect on people and their psyches and what they look forward to do later on in the future.
Yeah, of course.
Or now.
Yeah. Would you say that's like your long-term goal, is just to like inspire people and kind of just have this narrative of, hey, we want more people, you know, shown on the screen, or just knowing that, you know, there are more people like you and I and like you guys. So would you say your long-term goal is just to inspire generations to come? Or is it also, you know, growing the scholarship money, having bigger food fests all over America or anywhere in the world? What would you say?
I think speaking on my end, I think that's definitely part of it. I think it's just really inspiring anybody who is of color to do whatever it is that they want, to push the limits, to push the boundaries, and to just really make yourself known. I mean, there's times where I'm in these rooms where I'm like, I definitely shouldn't be here, and I definitely feel like I don't belong here. And I have people around me that always like just reassure me that this is where you're supposed to be. And if I can just be a small part in somebody wanting to pursue radio, wanting to pursue entertainment, I mean, there's people that tell me every day that like I didn't know being an in-stadium host was a job. I didn't know that. It just happens. You're at a game and you see it and you just don't really think about it. But when it comes to like the Mexipino podcast and the Mexipino Food Fest, it's one of those things where it's like I just want people to be inspired to do what it is that they want to do. We don't have to be the stereotypical nurse, doctor, cop, teacher. It's much more than that. And I think within both our cultures, we have a lot of talent of people and talented people, and it's just a matter of time before the world gets to see that.
Yeah, and even if we wanted to talk about it like from like a sports aspect, like I know there's a lot of like Mexicans and Mexican Americans in like baseball. One thing that I also push too is that there's a lot of Filipinos in basketball. Actually, there's not a lot, but there's a decent amount of Filipinos in both the NBA and also the NFL. One of them being
Nico Remigio.
Yeah, Nico Remigio, who had just won with the Chiefs like this past year. Jordan Clarkson from the Utah Jazz. Jalen Green from the Houston Rockets. It's cool to just see these guys and know that they're Filipino, because I'm like, man, first of all, I'm going to buy a jersey from them just because I feel represented, right? But secondly, like, me being a 5'7" Filipino, I never thought that being in the NBA was possible, even though these guys were like significantly taller than me. Like, it's just cool to see like my culture being represented on that screen and them also being receptive to that.
Yeah, it's being like, I mean, also knowing that whether you're half or full of anything, you are enough to be within your culture. And it's just an amazing feeling. And seeing, like when Nico was saying, a lot of these celebrities and athletes now coming out and being like, hey, yeah, like I am Filipino, or yeah, I am Mexican, and they embraced it. It's like cool, it's cool to show your culture and your background. And I think that's also one of the bigger pictures of it.
I think something that I just thought of too, it's cool how like, you learn Spanish as like a secondary language in high school. I want to make sure Tagalog could be like a secondary language in high school too. So I kind of want to push for that. That's just a little sweetener that I'm throwing in right there. So yeah.
Very cool. How do you, obviously you guys both have jobs outside of the Mexipino podcast. Do you want to eventually make it like your full-time job, or are you still okay with like just having this whole realm of the entertainment industry in your back pocket and just doing all these sorts of different things?
Yeah, I think I've shared with Nico very like a lot of times that as much as I have like fulfilled my dream of being on air and being on radio and doing what I do, I want to make my full-time my business, which is Mexipino Entertainment. We are, I think, the first in our families to have a company, have a licensed company and documented company, and it's really amazing to feel that way and being able to help our families in that sense, whether it's like treating them to a dinner or hiring on our families or giving them a booth at our food fest so they can promote what they want to. It's definitely a goal of mine to make this full time and have entertainment in the back pocket, whether it's just like if they need me to fill in or if I want to do a game, But I think this is giving me a much bigger purpose. Mexipino is giving me a much bigger purpose.
Yeah, and also too, I think this is the start of the generational wealth that we are setting up for our families, Mexipino, I hope, like lives on even like past our lives. I will say that Mexipino Entertainment is the start of generational wealth for our family and our families to come. I truly believe that. And whether Mexipino Entertainment itself continues on past our lives, I know for a fact that it is going to enable our families to start their own businesses and do more things beyond the realm of just, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to call it a day. Not to say that that's anything bad, but we just want to make sure that we are giving options to our families for the future.
Yeah, for sure.
I think what it is like I've heard somebody talk like there really is no like American dream anymore, because there's just so much going on in the world. I think our goal is to inspire just any dream that you want to do. It really is. It's just whether you want to do this, A, B, and C, and it's completely like out of left field, do it. If you want to go, I think we're so conditioned in our cultures that if you go to school, if you go to college, if you get an education and you get a job, you're successful. You can be successful in whatever it is that you want to do as long as you put your mind to it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, everything is just different with the way Jackie and I operate. Like, I went to college and I graduated from a 4-year. Jackie, she just went straight to her job after doing a couple semesters over at a junior college. And we say all that to say that the way that both she and I came up was completely different, but we make it work somehow. And either option is not a bad option, and either option can help you just get to where you want to get to.
You mentioned your families and how you're supporting them, and how have they supported you throughout this whole journey, and what was their first reaction when you guys told them about this podcast and what you're trying to do for your cultures?
I think the first initial reaction from my side of the family was just like, okay, like they're starting a podcast, we'll see where it goes, type of thing. But then I think once we started the food fest, that's when our families realized the impact that we had. And my family and Nico's family have been so supportive of everything that we do, because they see it firsthand. When we have our food fest here in LA, my family is helping out. They're picking up trash, they're picking up, they're handling, I hire my cousins to handle the front gate to let people in, scan tickets, sell tickets. They are so supportive. And in turn, my aunt, she has a dessert booth that we're like, hey, here, sell your desserts. We want you to thrive too. My family is so supportive, and Nico's family is the same as well.
Yeah, my family, they have come out to events over here all the way from the Bay Area. We're currently in Los Angeles right now, so that's about 5 hours away. And in addition to that too, we're also enabling our families to, we're creating jobs for our families as well. My sister, she is looking to start up her food business soon. As Jackie mentioned, we were able to support her aunt in that way. And in addition to that, we've also been able to hire Jackie's family members as well to, get them a little extra income.
Yeah.
So,
and your mom too has her own business.
And my mom has her own business too. Something that I never thought my mom would start. She's about to hit 60, but she just started her business. And even in that case, it's never too late to do something. So, I think the support isn't monetary. The support is really with a lot of elbow grease, and you guys are doing a great job. And that support is also coming through them also wanting to do something out of it. And because again, we look to inspire the generations, that includes the older generation, the ones that came before us. And if they're inspired to do something, that means they support what we are doing in turn.
I would love to know how you guys met, the story of how you guys came together and met.
Yeah, well, we both worked at iHeartMedia, so where I currently work and Nico used to work. I was a part-time street team member. I would pitch up tents and outside a random supermarket and promote the radio station, and sometimes in sketchy areas too. But yeah, so that's where I started at iHeart, and Nico was producing and mixing the night show for Real 92.3.
Yeah, so we kind of just met through
a mutual
work.
friend.
Yeah,
a mutual friend and work. I like to say that he stalked me at my desk, but he's
no, we don't want none of that. It's 2024. I don't want none of that.
But yeah, that's how we met, and then we just kind of talked for the first time, and he asked me out, and ever since then, we've been dating since 2020. we're a pandemic couple, so yeah, we literally started dating a month before everything closed down, and we were just kind of confused. I was like, okay, well, how is this gonna work? We were on Zoom dates, pressing play at the same time for Netflix. Yeah, it was very
Oh, that's
interesting.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
but now we've been together for 4 years. We just passed 4 years. Have a business together, have a dog together, and have moved in, which is kind of crazy for, like, I guess Latino culture is just moving out before you're married. But
Oh, it's not. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's definitely not like, oh, it's like a very big thing. But yeah, so it's 4 years in, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Um, how has it been? Obviously you started a business together, working together, living together, and you guys have your own busy schedules too. What would you say the most important aspect of like keeping a relationship together and just a healthy communication style?
Honestly, it really is. It really just comes down to communication, right? I think as being as transparent as possible, like I'm talking to you as your boyfriend, I'm talking to you as your friend, I'm talking to you as a business partner, I'm talking to you as, you have to be that completely transparent so none of it gets twisted at all.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that we had to understand on the fly. It's not something that you kind of just like pick up right off the bat, but you kind of have to go through a couple arguments and understand like, hey, I'm talking to you from this perspective. Once you understand that, then you could kind of catch the tones and cadences of like what you guys are talking about, or rather what we're talking about. And it becomes a lot easier after you go through a couple rounds, a couple
Yeah.
days, couple weeks.
Yeah, of
I
course.
Yeah, I think it's just like Nico said, just doubling back over that. It's being transparent. It's making the time too to understand that, okay, we're on business mode, or okay, we're in relationship mode, or I need time to myself mode. Like you can still be in a relationship and just be like, okay, you can have your space and I can have my space, or we can just be on the couch together and then come in here for work. It's kind of finding that, like, okay, here's what we can do and how we can figure it out.
Who would you say, besides like each other, who would you say like your biggest inspiration?
I would say it would be my grandfather. So I have a tattoo on my wrist. It's 1972.
Okay.
Not my birth year, but 1972 is the year that my grandfather moved from the Philippines to San Francisco by himself with like 13 US dollars in his pocket. And he did that to get a job, to buy a house and a car, and eventually moved over my grandma and my mom when she was about 5 years old. From the Philippines to here. And what my grandpa did was his house served as like the hub for my family members in the Philippines to move over there, and they could start their lives over there too. So, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many family members ended up living in my grandpa's house and now have like their own property and have their own jobs and their own kids and whatnot. I mean, it still happens to this day. Like I have cousins who like are in their 30s and 40s, like moving here and now just starting their families because my grandpa made it possible for them. So, I like to think that what my grandpa is still doing for my family is something that I personally want to continue to do for my family and our future generations.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I think for me, it's my immediate family. It's just my brother, my sister-in-law, my niece, and my parents. Like they are the biggest inspirations to me and keep me going. I would also a little bit, say my grandpa too. My grandpa sadly passed away in 2014, but it's been that constant. Okay, I want to make them proud. As Nico said earlier, I didn't finish school. And so if I didn't finish school, I told myself I knew I was going to have to make this work. Whatever I was going to do, I had to put 110% in and just make sure I got it done. I grew up with a very I guess you can say strict household. My parents are just kind of just being parents, I guess you could say. But I learned discipline. I learned, right from wrong. I learned how to, if you're going to commit to something, commit to it and don't back out of it. And I'm the first person in my family to do something completely out of the ordinary, do something that nobody has experience in. And luckily, I had parents who were just like, well, she's going to figure it out. I don't think they fully understood what it is that I wanted to do at first, but then seeing what I do now, they're kind of like, okay, we kind of understand it more. We get it. And I'm lucky to be in a position where I can take my family to different experiences, different opportunities, whether it's with work, whether it's with Mexipino. If there's an opportunity to take them somewhere or treat them to something, that's what I want to do. They're my biggest inspiration, my biggest supporters, aside from Nico, but it really motivates me every single day. I mean, having a niece that I can spoil, alongside Nico's niece and nephew, if we can spoil them and we're the cool tia and uncle, we're chilling, that's what we want to be.
Yeah. No, of course, that's awesome. Kind of relating to that, besides just being there for your family and inspiring them and just supporting them, how do you individually want to be remembered? What do you want to be known for?
Dang, I never really thought of that.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I never really thought of that. I think for me, I want to be remembered and want people to speak of me as in that I help them. Not that I was an inspiration for them to do something, but that I was able to help them get to a certain point, that I did it with grace, I did it with integrity, and that I did it in the purest way possible. I think it's very easy in this industry that we're in, entertainment and being business owners, to be, completely just effed over multiple times. And Nico and I carry ourselves with a lot of grace and a lot of, we're going to help you. We're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to belittle anybody to do it. We're not going to step on anybody to do it. We're going to do it with class, grace, and integrity. And that's what I want people to know, that, I helped them. I was able to open a door for somebody.
Honestly, man, I just want to be remembered for doing dope shit. That's it. but just dope stuff. And I just think that I love what I do so much that when it really starts supporting our family and our families, I just want to be able to say I did it. And I was able to just do what I love unapologetically without folding, and my family can thrive off of that. And other people's family members and whatnot can just hopefully be inspired by that and continue to do that for their families as well.
If you could go back in time and give advice to your younger self, what would you tell them?
Don't be scared. Don't be scared. I think the number one thing was, lack of information. The second biggest thing was fear. I've been out here in LA for about 10 years now. It wasn't until, and then, I started my career doing everything I do about 7 years ago. It probably wasn't until year, 4 or 5 where I really started to feel confident with what I'm doing. And now it's actually enabled me to just pursue literally anything that I want to do. As I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, I started music production just last year. I'm 31 right now. I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people. I don't know anybody who starts music production at the age of 30. It's usually a 14-year-old, just
Right,
in a room and whatnot. I was versed with music way back then too. However, once I started to grow into my own confidence and who I am as a person, I started to realize I can legitimately do anything. So if I could go back to even when I was 15 years old, 16 years old, when I first picked up a keyboard and whatnot, I would literally tell myself just keep going at it, just do it, don't be scared, and you'll be alright.
I think for me it would be, Nico used the word confident a lot. I think it would to be more confident and to just know that, you know, to look at the positive too. To be confident and to look at the positive. When I was younger, I was very much in like this weird headspace, you know, navigating high school and figuring out what it was I want to do, and, you know, losing somebody very close to me and to my family. And I was very like sad and miserable a lot of the time back then. And then after that, it was just having this like not being confident enough in myself, in my abilities, in my own skin. And I think if I had a little bit more of that, I would be not so afraid now when it comes to being in those spaces like I mentioned, and being like, okay, maybe I don't belong here, maybe I shouldn't be here, like there's something going on in this universe that I shouldn't be here. But if I had that confidence at a young age, I think that definitely would have changed my perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah, of course. You guys both talked about confidence and just like growing in that. Would you say like there was a sense of kind of like lost identity, and was there a point that it kind of came, you're like, okay, I'm actually very comfortable doing this, or was it kind of a gradual increase as you grew in your profession?
I'd say it was a gradual increase. I'd say like from a life perspective, right? Like I definitely didn't know who I was up until probably about I was like 26. But then once everything started to click, it was just kind of like boom and then boom. So, you know, I forgot what they call that. But yeah, like it's not like a linear growth or anything. Like it really is kind of like I'll put it this way, a bamboo tree, you have to maintain watering it for like 7 to 10 years or something like that. And you can keep on watering it and like nothing's gonna happen, right? But on year 7, I believe, it just sprouts like crazy.
Really?
It becomes like this massive bamboo tree, and that is literally the best, like that's the best way I can depict my personal growth, confidence, and like becoming myself. Because once you figure it out, it's up to you to just keep your foot on the pedal, and that's what I've done.
Yeah, I think for me it definitely had to be a spontaneous and immediate growth. Luckily, you know, I have Nico, who's been through experiences in the industry and who has now seen me from the ground up be like, hey, I know that this is going on, but you just gotta shake it off. You gotta understand that, you know, this is gonna happen, and as long as I'm confident within myself and know that I'm doing the best that I can, then that's all that matters. For me, I wish it could be a gradual growth so I could, you know, take more time and not have to go through certain experiences. But it's a hard lesson to learn. But it's something that's needed. It's something that's definitely needed, and I am grateful for it. It didn't technically happen overnight. It still took a few months for me to stop crying and stop like having these breakdowns, but I would say that it's something that you gotta learn. It's tough, but it's gonna help you in the long run.
Do you guys incorporate fashion in your everyday lives? Do you have like a certain style that helps with self-expression, jewelry, whatnot, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I constantly change my wardrobe. I literally just like took out so much stuff from my closet right now, and I bought more stuff that Nico probably doesn't know about, but I'm always constantly changing how I look, what I wear, my hair. Right now I'm like going through this like weird phase of like, okay, I put like these blonde streaks in my hair and now I want to change them. There was a point where I was wearing like really baggy clothes. Now I kind of want to wear like somewhere in between. Like it's a constant change for me with fashion, trying to figure out what I feel confident in. For me, like it's feeling confident in my own skin, and like I have been more so lately, and I think that's just a way of figuring it out. We're all gonna have those really awkward moments of what, you know, what we're wearing and looking back. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but just feeling confident in what you wear. It's whether it's like changing your wardrobe completely. Nico is a completely different person, though.
I have a shirt from 16 years ago that I wear to sleep. Like, I'm good.
Nico doesn't like match. He mixes and matches, and
Well, so when I was younger, I used to be super on top of it about like, okay, if I'm wearing like a red shirt, I'm gonna wear like some red shoes, maybe a red hat. Like it would be like all red everything or whatever. Nowadays, I'm just like, you know what? I got a lot of stuff to do, so I'm just gonna put on whatever I got and like just get to it really. And you know, it's funny because like, you know, I just think that even with what I wear, like, it's just unapologetically me. Like, I'll go to a wedding wearing Jordans, for example, right? Because that's just me. Like, that's literally what you get. I'll do weddings in, like, a button-up and, like, a shirt, but I'll make sure that it's good I'll make sure that I'm good and killing your night, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I just like to say, like, with everything that I do, including like with what I wear and whatnot, like this is me, so it's either you like it or you don't, and if you don't, then I can always move somewhere else. Like I'm not tripping, like it's good.
I mean, I'll find like 4 different outfits before I actually find the one that I'm
Yeah.
going for the day.
It's funny how you guys are just so different with that.
Yeah.
Too. Just like your outfits and buying
We
stuff.
kinda-
I'm
you know,
the same
we
way as
kinda
you,
balance
Jackie. I change every time.
We kind of balance each other out, you know, like if there's
Yeah.
a special event and I'm just like pulling up in a t-shirt, Jackie's like, no,
No,
like,
you're absolutely not
don't
doing
do
that.
that.
Right?
I'm
You're
like-
not doing that right now.
I'm like, all right, that's fine. Or like, you know, if we're going somewhere very lax and Jackie's like all dressed, you know, like super dressed up, I'm just like, you can wear shoes, like it's okay.
It's funny because like I think when we first met, I don't think Nico owned more than one button up, and now he does. And then when we first met, and I would go out with him to his DJ gigs at a club, I always had this like a preconceived notion that like, okay, you're supposed to go out in a club dress and heels and blah blah blah, and Nico's like, you could go in a baggy shirt and jeans, like, and I felt so much more confident being in a baggy shirt and jeans. I was like, I am never ever going to wear heels in a club ever again.
It's uncomfortable dancing in those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just more lax. It's more comfortable. I'm not like, my feet aren't hurting by the end of the night. It's great. So yeah, as much as we have a completely different style from each other, we definitely have influences of each other's style in our wardrobe. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves within like what each other likes. I mean, we're both just from different parts of California, so we dress differently, and the people who we grew up with dress a lot differently, of, you know, same gender, sexes and whatnot too. Like we just all dress differently. But I say all that to say, like, I think that we find ourselves within the way each other dresses, and we could kind of figure out like, who are we in a baggy tee? Who am I in like a little bit more of like a button up, you know? Like Jackie says I have button ups, well I have a button up with like a whole bunch of bananas on it.
Yeah.
Because that's just, you know what I mean? Like that's just me. So like we figure it out.
What do you guys do outside of work, and where do you find the time just for yourselves and just kind of that relaxation or hobbies, anything like that?
I honestly think it's just spending time with each other, or doing stuff that we just like separately. Like if I want to have a day to myself, to have a self-care day, I go and do that. We have a dog, so we take him wherever we can, to the dog park, to the dog beach, to just go out and just literally be disconnected from everything, or whether that's hanging out with family, taking a trip up to the Bay Area to visit Nico's family, or one of the many parties that my family has every weekend. Like we'll just go there and relax, have a drink, you know, and eat good food, just be surrounded. We're very much foodies. We love to eat. We love to go and try anything and everything. And so that's just kind of like simple stuff, relaxing, going to, whether it's just a farmer's market, anything like that. It's just, as long as we can disconnect, we're happy with it.
Yeah. And then for me on like a daily basis, I kind of have like I kind of divide my day up in 3. Literally 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of doing whatever the hell I want to do. Then and the whatever the hell I want to do will also include Jackie, right? But
Yeah.
you know, realistically, I think we're just so caught up in like, especially on social media, where it's like, you gotta work like 24/7, da da da. You're gonna burn out. Like I'm so cool off of that. Like I'm doing a really good job of just balancing everything out with like that rule of just splitting my day into 3, 8 hours each time. 8, 16, 20, 8, 16, 24,
Yeah, you're like weird.
No, that's really cool. I've never heard of the AA rule. I might do that too now.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
It helps out a lot.
Yeah, because I'm like pulling like 12-hour days. I'm like, why did I do that? I didn't have to do that. I'm like, God, what's wrong? Where do you get the drive and motivation to kind of keep your business going, and how do you prepare for each podcast? How does that process work?
Bills. You know what I mean?
That
You
is
got bills to pay.
that, and aside from that, I think it's just people who that Mexipino podcast is part of their week. There's people that listen every week, want to hear the new episode. We drop every week, so it's if we like miss something, somebody will say something and just be like, hey, like what happened this week, you know, or like why didn't you guys post this week? And that keeps us accountable in that sense. Of like, okay, well, we're a part of someone's weekly routine, and whether that's just like catching up on what we're doing, or when you talk about preparation, we see, you know, a lot of hatred towards our communities sometimes, and we talk about that so that way it's, you know, it's brought into light, so that way we know that we're bigger than just one, you know, that we can help each other. It's really being in the know of what's going on within our communities, talking about whether it's the Olympics that just happened and knowing how many Filipinos won medals for the Philippines, how many Mexicans, how many Americans, you know, how many Mexican Americans that were representing the U.S. or whatever that may be, just talking about that and really just being in the know of what's going on within our communities. And let's say we went through something that week that, you know, we want to talk about, whether it was good or bad, and we want someone to learn a lesson from that, we talk about it. We're very open and very transparent. We're a very open book, and I think anybody who listens to the podcast knows that, and anybody who really knows us knows that we're an open book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's awesome. And just my last question for you. What has been either your peak in life, your peak in your career? Like, what is a moment in your life that you go back to and think, oh my gosh, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be here today?
A peak in my career. Dang, you're hitting us with a hard-hitting question. Dang.
I'll say this is like one of the ones that come to mind. So during the pandemic, the Philippines actually got hit with a massive typhoon. Actually, they got hit with two. And so while I was on Twitch, me and a couple of the other DJ friends, we put together an event that basically raised $30,000 in donations for the Philippines typhoon relief. It was cool because during that time, and we also put together like a Stop AAPI hate like program as well, which also raised probably around like $15,000 or something like that. And it was cool to just be someone who like organized the whole thing and also be a part of it, because you in real time saw how many people were supporting the cause. Donations coming from left and right from people all across the world, and just building a community of people, of like-minded people, whether they be DJs or people who enjoy DJs. It was great. Without that definitely sparked my love, reignited my love for my culture, and it helps me continue to do what I do today.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think, I don't know, that's a really hard question for me, like my peak in my career, because I feel like I'm just still so early on in my career. I think just working with people that I listened to growing up. I work on the cruise show daily. The guy that I work with now, the main guy of this show, went to my high school in 2016 and was hosting something there, and now I literally work with him every day. It's crazy to see. It's like more full circle moments. I think for me, I feel like I still have yet to hit my peak. I think it's just more full circle moments for me right now. With the Food Fest and Mexipino podcast, I think seeing people come up to us and showing us their babies and literally handing us their babies and just like, here, can you take a picture of my Mexipino baby? I'm like, okay, like, all right. I think that's what's getting me there to that. It's getting me there to realize that I am orchestrating something that's so big that people are just feel so welcome to come up to me and just be happy and talk to me about their family and introduce everybody. So and so's from here, so and so's from there. And it's really fun. It gives me so much purpose. And like I said, I don't want to say that I've hit a peak yet because I'm so early on in my career, but it's just more for full circle moments.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. I haven't hit a peak. That was a peak amongst other valleys.
No, for sure. Well, that's all. Thank you so much, guys.